And I'm Lynne McTaggart.
And we are What Doctors Don't Tell You. And it's another multimedia extravaganza of podcasts, vlogcasts, and Facebook Live.
Hello, hi, Facebook
Live. So for the Facebook Live, as everyone else, our first item is, well, actually, the first item reminds me of that old saying, which is, the path to hell is paved by good intention.
You think these are good intentions?
Well, absolutely. And it goes to the heart of modern medicine because it's a good intention to prescribe drugs to people because they're supposed to work. And it is also supposed to keep the hospitals less busy because people are taking the drugs. And it occurred to someone in the UK back in 2004 that if we actually incentivise doctors to prescribe more drugs, we'd have fewer people going to hospital and all the rest of it. But and they are very well incentivised. The average doctor in the UK earns an extra £17,000 a year, $21,000. And it's an incentive scheme that actually runs around the world. It's not all the same, of course, but every health system in the world carries out a similar sort of incentive to encourage doctors to prescribe more drugs so that it takes the strain off hospitals. And that sounds perfectly reasonable. So anyway, it finally occurred to some researchers 17 years or so later to actually say, well, is this actually making a difference? And so they did an analysis of the most common drugs that are prescribed for chronic conditions such as heart disease, high blood pressure, stroke, diabetes, and found that in fact the drugs made no difference at all. The people were just as ill as people who weren't taking the drugs, and indeed they were going to hospital as frequently as people who weren't taking the drugs. But of course the doctors were still getting their money every year. So these drugs were doing absolutely nothing for the major chronic diseases we suffer in the West.
You know, what I think is so terrible is this kind of financial and the monetization of medicine. I think that's what's really concerning me because we are, incentivizing doctors to do lots of things. Whether this is vaccination or any kind of drug taking, doctors are getting the money the more they prescribe. Now, of course, the only one who really benefits from this is the pharmaceutical industry. And it really concerns me that the pharmaceutical industry and its, financial gain have essentially hijacked medicine. And this is a perfect example of it. What doctor wouldn't want to make a little extra for his holiday?
Sure.
But it's absolutely the wrong way around. And it's, in the UK where we live, they do the same with vaccination. People and children are given vaccines, and the doctor has to have a certain quota in order to get his bonus. So he hustles everybody to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
And I think there's something really fundamentally wrong with that.
And it goes back to that point we often raise, is the difference between acute and chronic disease, where acute is the one where you're likely to die any minute, such as from a heart attack or a road accident or whatever it might be, which represents something like 8 to 9% of all disease, and the rest is made up of chronic conditions, which can be heart disease that isn't fatal, cancers, diabetes, osteoarthritis, psoriasis, you name it. Virtually every condition is actually chronic. And this study demonstrates that the drugs don't do anything for them. And yet, we continue to splash out all this money on chronic care on a system that doesn't work. And there are so many other things that are non-drug based that are working, and they don't even get a look in.
I know, and this is where we come in. This is why we do this magazine every month. This is our September issue, and we can give you a little preview of our October issue. But what we find is, with things like this, better solutions for things like hearing loss. Medicine can't do anything about that. Ways to regrow cartilage to end hip replacements, knee replacements. You name it. If there's a condition out there, there's an alternative treatment that works and has evidence for it. And that's what we keep looking for. And other than emergency medicine, we've got to give conventional medicine its place as the place for the acute issue. It's brilliant if you need a cesarean. It's brilliant if you get run over by a truck. It's brilliant if you get a heart attack. But for all of those other chronic diseases, we need systems that look at the body more holistically, and that's what alternative medicine does.
And just on a final note, it's worth adding that what the researchers didn't take into account was the adverse effects, side effects of these drugs that were also escalating other health problems and were actually more likely to lead to a hospital visit. And of course that wasn't taken into account when they were measuring this performance.
And remember, when people do get side effects, nobody puts two and two together and says it's the drug that they're taking, so they give them other drugs. And so you get this whole complicated interaction and multiplied side effect situation going on.
So there we are, the path to hell. All right, bye Facebook Livers, and we'll carry on with our podcast. Bye.
Bye.